We have a speaker who defines what it means to build with precision and global vision. She's a trained pharmacist with a first-class master's degree from the University of Nottingham. She has taken that discipline and structured approach and applied it to the world of fashion. As the founder of Aniyadxb and Zere Fashion House, she is at the forefront of elevating African designers on the global stage. I warmly welcome Oluwatosin Oladimeji. Good evening, Tosin. It's great to
Hi,
have
Taiwo.
you.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very curious what made you switch from pharmacy to fashion. I hope we're going to be hearing some of that today. That's interesting.
Ah, yeah, I mean, I've always had a love for fashion and a love for the sciences, which is why I became a pharmacist. But I thought I would do both, for the long term. But fashion has my heart now. So yeah,
Amazing, amazing. I can't wait to hear all about it.
thank you so much.
All right,
Would you like
the
me to
stage is
start?
yours. Yes,
Okay,
please.
thank you so much. So thank you so much, Taiwo, and thank you so much, Tosin, and the whole Main Slayers team for having me on today. I'm really honored. And thank you to everyone who has shown up today as well. So I'll go into it straight away. I'll introduce myself. I know Taiwo, thank you so much for that introduction as well. So my name is Tosin Oladimeji, and I am the founder of Zere Fashion House in the UK, and Ania Dubai in Dubai as well. And I'm a big champion of African fashion, and it's something that I've had a passion for many years now. We started Zara 11 years ago, and I'm just so grateful to do what I do and be sort of the channel, to get African fashion to the globe. So yeah, and I've been asked just to speak on what I wish I knew before building my fashion business today. And I just wanted to share just some of the lessons that I've taken over the years, some of the things I've tried, the errors, trials, reflection, and just the things that have helped me really to grow the businesses to where they are today. So I really hope that at least someone is able to benefit from what I share today. So the first thing that I wish I knew really was the importance of knowing my target audience. And so when I started Zere, it was really a passion project for me. A little bit of why I started Zere was I was trying to find something for my graduation to wear. I really wanted to wear Nigerian designer. My parents were in Nigeria. My mom went from shop to shop, couldn't find anything. And I ended up having to just buy a dress. I was in the UK from one of the shops. And I just thought to myself, I'm sure there are more people who would want access to Nigerian design. So I put out a survey and I was overwhelmed with the amount of responses that I got, people even listing what designers they wanted. And I thought, wow, there's something here. How about I try and bring, at that time, Nigerian designs to the UK? And so I just sort of started, I'm almost like the not the norm because most people would kind of hesitate, but I just kind of jumped into it and thought, oh, I don't know, nothing could go wrong. And so with that, and though that was good to do that, but one thing I didn't do was I didn't really think it through, like in terms of like the target audience. And so I knew that I wanted to serve, the African diaspora, so in the UK, in the US, and globally, but I just didn't know who that individual target audience was. I didn't ask like the deep questions, as we say, what are they looking for? What do they want to wear? Where are they going? What can they afford? And there's this saying that says that, if everyone is your customer, then no one is your customer. And I think that that was something that I really had to learn, I would say, sort of like, the hard way. And so when I started onboarding designers, I was looking for what was trending. I was looking at what I liked, and soon I began to see sort of the consequences for that. So we had a website full of so many, amazing Nigerian designers, but they actually weren't what my customers wanted. And there were so many designers, so many designs to look through, but not a lot of the pieces were actually meeting the needs that they wanted. Because, of course, a lot of my designers were in Nigeria. We were in the UK, completely different climate, completely different, even culture. And what people were wanting, in Nigeria wasn't necessarily what people wanted in the UK, but I just thought, oh, if it's doing well in Nigeria, it will do well there. And I soon began to get questions, from customers saying, no, I really want to buy something, but I just can't find, what I need. And I think as a fashion retailer, that really broke my heart. And from there, I just started to work on, what actually do people want? And I started asking questions like, what do they need? What are they shopping for? What occasions are they going to? And what price point really feels, familiar to them. And once I started to do this, I had to make some difficult decisions basically, and we had to let go of over 40% of our designers because I realized I wasn't actually what people wanted, even though they were doing great things and had great pieces. And so that shift for us really changed everything for us. Once we started to get the designers that aligned with our customer base, what happened was our old customers started coming back, and our new customers who were aligned with these designers started discovering us and shopping with us. And that was a real pivotal point for us in Zere. And so years later, when I started Ania, I took that same approach. And so from our first pop-up, we only had 3 designers. I wasn't looking for, the more, I was looking for the less. And I was really very big on curating. And so from there, we moved on to 5 and then to 8. But what I did and I made sure of was that we moved slowly, and we asked the questions, we observed, we analyzed, what do people like? What are people buying? I didn't assume again that, oh, I've done this in the UK. I knew that actually the customers in the UAE, in the Middle East, they were different, and I wanted to know what they wanted. And I can see that that has really been a big reason why Ania has done so well so early on, because we really have curated for that target audience. And so I would really just advise anyone sort of, even if you're a fashion, you're a fashion, you're fashion designer or you're into curation, whatever sector you're in, I would say it's so important to know your target audience, because that would really, it would save you a lot. It will save you a lot of hassle, it'll save you a lot of time, but it will also help you to build intentionally. It will help, it will help you create the right pieces, curate the right pieces, even in terms of your price point as well, because that was the one thing we really struggled with, and I'll come onto that in one of my points as well. But it's something I really, really would advise to do. The second thing that I would say is that I wish I knew was the invisible work that goes behind building a brand. I think I really underestimated. Again, with Zara, I was just so happy people wanted these things. I was like, oh, let's make it happen. And I didn't realize, as people will say, I didn't count the cost. I didn't realize how much work goes into it. I just thought, oh, I'll just be the middleman. The designers have their clothes. They probably even have, a customer base in the UK. I'll just be the middleman and then they'll just come and buy from me. It sounded so simple, but honestly, it wasn't. I really realized very quickly that wow, there's a lot of work that goes behind it. And anyone who's built a brand, whether in fashion or even just, that there's a lot of work that goes behind it. And so as Taiwo said, I was a pharmacist. This was actually my training year after uni. So it was quite an intensive year. And I found that I was answering customer calls, going, speaking to delivery partners, if a delivery had been, messed up or something had happened. I was going to the post office to post orders myself during my lunch breaks. I would be eating a sandwich, on the postal line, speaking to designers, getting them to actually come on board, with us. I didn't realize how much time, managing stock, getting the right delivery partners, that even shipping from like Nigeria to the UK. And so it was something that I wish I knew. I wish someone had said to me, actually, and especially because we grew really quickly, we were getting, a lot of people were like, oh yeah, well, we really want to be, in the UK. But I just didn't realize how much invisible work that was. And as we know, it's that work that really grows, the business, there's logistics, there's problem solving, and also that emotional labor that goes behind it as well. And so my advice that I would advise anyone, who's starting off, or even if you've already started, is be prepared for that invisible labor. Speak to business owners who have gone before you, ask them, what their challenges were, even what their challenges are now. Because even if you can't, you definitely can't prepare for everything, but even if you can prepare for some of them, I promise you, you'll be ahead of the curve already. And also just surround yourselves with people who can help. Most of us, when we start off, we can't hire it costs a lot to hire. So you're most likely doing it, probably even all by yourself, or maybe you've got family or friends that can help you. But if you can hire, if you can afford it, then I would say hire quickly and hire wisely, because surely business you cannot do alone. Um, my third point of what I wish I knew how important pricing was to the survival of a business. And I think this was probably one of my biggest lessons. And even when I speak to fashion founders, I think it's one thing that we've all gone through. We've all at some point priced wrongly. And I think so when we started when we started Zere, we were very new. So a lot of the designers, we didn't have a track record. So a lot of them wanted us to buy wholesale, which of course was understandable. And so we really had to sort of pay up front to get to get that inventory. And so when I got these pieces, with designers, they would give us a wholesale price, which was really very, very generous of them. But I remember I would get the pieces and I'd want to price, and the first thing that would happen is I would get all emotional. I'd get all scared that what if nobody's going to buy it? And I started to price for what I actually thought I could afford, what I thought people could afford. Again, I was newly out of uni, so I was working. This was my internship year, so I wasn't earning a lot. And so what I found was I priced so low, but I was so happy. I was just happy for people to just get the orders in. Every time we'll get an order, I'd be there dancing, whether I was at work, whether I was on the streets, so happy that people were just buying it. But actually, that happiness and that excitement was not sustainable. I found that for the next 3 years when we started, our bank balance was always empty. As soon as we got money in, we were using it to buy something, and I couldn't even afford to pay myself, which I know is normal, but not even a stipend. I couldn't afford to pay myself. Every amount, every pound was spent on buying something new. And at that point, because I had a full-time job, so at this point, I'd gone into now becoming a full pharmacist. Because I had my job, I didn't really feel the pressure. But then a couple of years later, I got married. I'd gotten married, had my son, and I was on maternity leave. And that's when, as most parents, you're thinking, oh, I don't want to go back to work, things like that. And I thought to myself for the first time, that can this business actually sustain me? Like, can I do this? Can I leave my 9 to 5 for this business? And so I looked at our numbers, and for the first time, I was so shocked. I realized that though we were making sales, our margin was so little. And so I started to read up on how to price correctly, how to mark up the prices. And the moment I saw what our prices actually should be, again, that fear came and I thought, no, nobody's going to buy at this price. But I had to make a decision, because at that point I saw that if it was either I increased my prices or this business was done. Because like I said, a lot of work was going into it. A lot of my life was going into it. And I just thought I can't keep doing this and we're not making anything. So I fought the fear. And I just thought, what, I'm going to increase the prices. And something incredible happened. As expected, sales slowed down initially. Some customers who knew me well even messaged, say, oh, your prices are higher, things like that. But actually, after that, and a really short period, we noticed that people started buying. Like even new customers started coming. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, like, wow. And people were actually buying it. And I realized that these were the people that had seen the value of the outfits. These were people that were actually aligned. These were actually my customers who were buying it. And what was also so great for that was there were so many things that we couldn't afford as a business before. We couldn't afford to do ads well. We couldn't afford to do shoots. We relied on the photographs and pictures from our designers. But the moment that money started to come in, actually what happened was we were able to do our own shoots. We were able, so our image, our brand sort of got better, which again got us new customers, got us, more aligned customers. We were able to hire. So I hire a social media manager. I was able to hire, an operations manager as well. And I just realized that the thing I had been fighting, thing I had been so scared of was actually what, again, completely changed my business. And so once again, my advice, to people is, do the work early on your pricing. do it early. And one thing, I always advise as well is it's not arrogance if you're priced correctly. It's actually confidence. And once you start that way, you will attract. I know that in the beginning, we all want, customers, we're just worried about will we sell? We want to know if this would work. But actually, if you get the right customers early on, you'll find that they'll follow you. They will follow you. I've had customers that have been shopping with us for over 8 years. So really do that pricing early because it will sustain your business. My fourth point, and if there's definitely one lesson I have to share, it is this. It's the importance of learning to pivot. In every business, we constantly have to evolve to survive. And especially for us in the fashion business, we already know this. Fashion is always evolving, trends are evolving, customers are evolving, customer behaviors are evolving. And so our businesses must, evolve as well. I was speaking to a group of friends recently, and I was saying to them, I just feel like with business, the finish line or the goalpost is always changing. We had Instagram, we had to do this. We had TikTok. Now, as founders, we have to do founder led. We have our own Instagram. The goalpost is always changing. But the truth is, business is always changing, life is always changing, and we can't rely on the things that have always worked because if we do that, so many businesses have lost their businesses, that way. And so, especially even in this age of AI, things are evolving really quickly, evolving really fast. And we have to not so much even keep up, but actually, we have to keep learning. We have to keep learning. We have to adapt where we need to change. And I'm not saying it's all the time, but where we see that we need to change, we need to make that change. So that we actually and our businesses don't fall behind. And I think a really good example of this was, I think maybe about 3 to 4 years into running Zere, at this point, we'd now, a lot of people started to know us, designers started to know us. And so finally, we were getting offers, of consignment rather than wholesale buying. And of course, as you can imagine, I was so excited. I was so happy because again, when you're wholesale buying, there's only so much money you have, there's only so much money you have to buy stock. And so if you really want to grow your inventory, what you really need, is consignment. And so designers were agreeing to consignments. They could see our track record, see what customers were buying. And I was really happy about this. But then came a problem. As we were getting new stock from these designers, we saw that demand started to grow. But at the same time that demand was growing, what was happening was the stock was getting sold out so quickly. And customers were complaining, like, oh, I just saw this on your page, on your Instagram page. How come it's sold out already? And, I would speak to designers and say, can you give us more inventory, please? But as you can imagine, they were a bit reluctant. Some would, some wouldn't. And I realized that, what, if we continue this way, something basically has to change. I remember that sometimes people would even say, oh, we want more. We would go ahead and reorder. But of course, coming from Nigeria, it would take 2 weeks to produce, another 1 to 2 weeks to ship to us. By the time we got it in about a month's time, again, customers had moved on, they'd moved on to something else, and then would be stuck with all this inventory. And so I realized that no, something has to change. And honestly, the only thing we could do was to go back to wholesale. Again, I didn't want to do that. I felt like, okay, finally, we were being able to keep some money, things like that. But actually, that was what saved our business. The moment I decided to wholesale, again, designers were really happy because they were getting that money up front. Whatever quantities we wanted, we were able to get. And our customers were happy as well because whenever they would come, pieces were made available for them. And again, this was what saved us at this point because at this point, a lot more people were getting to know about us. But the feedback we were constantly hearing was, but you have to be quick because if you're not quick, it's going to finish, and there's nothing worse that you want than people coming to your website and leaving empty handed. The next time they probably won't come. So for us, this was a real big, it was a big problem for us. And I'm so grateful and so happy, that I felt the fear, but I just said, what, this is what we have to do. I wasn't comfortable in, I'm doing consignment now. And now, even with Ania, we still use those two purchasing models. So some of our designers we stock by consignment, some designers we stock by buying wholesale, and that has given us that great balance that we need, and just helped us to survive, in a time where we could just have gone under. And so once again, my big tip there would be, whatever your business needs to survive, look at your numbers, look at your business, speak to your customers, but be willing to make that change, be willing to adapt. And then my final point, because I know I've been talking for a while, my final point, and I think this is probably the most the most emotional one for me, is that I thought I was building a business, but actually the business was building me. Um, when I started, like I said, when I started, I thought, this was something I was really passionate about, and I still am. I love, African designs. I love, the African designers. I love our creativity, and it's something that I really wanted to showcase, on a global scale. And I remember when I started, for me, it was all about the passion. I was just excited that people wanted to buy it, and I remember even thinking, oh, it's nice to have some extra income, and maybe even, I would be able to come out of the 9 to 5, before I looked at my numbers. But what I quickly realized was that actually running a business, it will test you. It will test your patience. It will test your courage. It will test your beliefs. It will test your humility. It will test how resilient you are. And it will really stretch you. If anyone that's run a business, it would really stretch you. It would challenge you. I say it would really show you, like it would show you the core of you, parts of you that you didn't even know existed. But what I always advise, new business owners or even existing business owners is, allow your business to do that. Don't let it consume you. Don't let it overwhelm you. Don't let it, break you, but actually allow it to, do that work in you. Allow it to shape you to become the person that you are supposed to be. Because though it's been, 11 years in business, though it has been hard, I'm so grateful for the person that I am now, that I allowed my business, to build, that I allowed my business to build in me. So a lot of us, when we're starting a business, it's about the money, it's about, maybe, financial freedom, or even just, freedom from doing a 9 to 5. Some of us might be new moms and we're pivoting, to work around our children. We want to be home more. Whatever that reason is, it will stretch you. Hard times will come. It's never rosy. There's a saying that business is not for the faint-hearted, and it is so true. It really is not for the faint-hearted. But if we actually allow that process, you will find that our businesses will build us and will be so much better, for that. So it will grow us, it will refine us. And as long as we, like I said earlier, as long as we don't choose to do it alone, I love my business owner friends. We'll go out, we'll have lunch, we encourage each other, we strengthen each other. If you have a team, or even just someone that you're working with, don't do it alone, because business, can be that consuming. But I think that at the end of it, you will be so grateful for it. And I always just say that remember that business is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's lifelong. Even in cases where we hear people sell their businesses, you find that they're still doing one thing or the other with it. So it is lifelong. But I think that the rewards from it are just amazing, personally, emotionally, and as a business as well. And so just to close, like I shared, being being a fashion entrepreneur and owning a fashion business has definitely been one of the most rewarding but yet challenging journeys of my life. But it has also just taught me so much about myself, about business, about life, about customers, about serving as well. And it's just also showed me that, success is not just about, starting all perfect, making it all perfect. But as we're going along, as long as you're learning, as long as you're adjusting, as long as you're listening to your customers, listening to, and just ready to adapt, ready to change. I think that there's so much that business can offer us. And I hope that, what I've shared today, it literally has taken me years, and I'm still learning every day. I still make mistakes. I'm still, pivoting every day. But I hope that what I've shared today, will help someone, to build, even smarter, to build faster, to build better, and, build a more sustainable business. And that's me. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Tosin. That was amazing. That was very insightful and heartfelt. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So we have some questions for you. I believe this person heard all about the fact that you're a mom, you're a wife, you're a business owner. So the question is, how have you been able to balance your business, your ambition, and your personal well-being, as well as family responsibilities?
That is a really good question. And I'll say that. Honestly, is there a balance? There is a balance, but I say that in certain seasons, I find that I am more like one side will probably be more skewed in certain seasons. And so like when I had my kids, I would say like for the first nine months to a year, I was a mom. My business definitely suffered. I had people who were helping me. But in certain times as well, I find that sometimes I have to outsource some things, outsource the meals. I have a very amazing husband, a very hands-on husband. And so where I know that I can't be there, maybe it be physically or, sometimes I just have to sort of lock myself in a room, especially in seasons, busy seasons for us, business-wise, which don't happen a lot, but, especially like in a year where we have the pop-ups, the weeks of the pop-ups that week before the pop-up, I am, so consumed with everything. I'm running up and down, doing all of that. And so I find that what I just try to do is I try to be present always. If I'm at home, I'm not trying to be working. Sometimes I will have my laptop, but if I'm with my kids, I want to be with my kids. If I'm with my husband, I'm with my husband. If I'm with my friends, I try to be present. And then when I'm at work as well, be present in that. I also find that, being efficient with my time. Because I find that as business owners, let's be honest, we get really distracted. One moment I'm looking at the sales report, one moment I'm this. So I really have found that structuring my time, structuring my day, even if that means waking up earlier sometimes, most times, waking up early before my kids are up, before I have to do school runs, it really is a lot of sacrifices, especially when we have kids and we have our home and our husbands, because we don't want any part to suffer. But I try not for any part to suffer, and I put things in place and I plan where I can. Sometimes, let's be honest, I do drop the ball, but I plan where I can just to make sure that that doesn't happen. But I know that in seasons where I know it will be busy and I'm not there, I also explain to my kids, depending on how old your kids are as well, so that they know. My son will tell me, "Oh, I know mommy has a pop-up," because he knows that I'm busy. So those are the little things that I've done. But I really think that if I'm gonna really emphasize on one point, it would be that structure of my day. As soon as I say having a detailed sort of to-do list, putting a time to it, which is usually hard, I found, and sticking to it, that discipline, I found that actually I was able to get pockets of times during the day, and that has really been, yeah, how I've done it.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. So the next question is, I have a 9 to 5, but I'm also a fashionpreneur on the side. How do I know when it's time to leave my 9 to 5?
Again, a really good question. I think it's different for different people. That's what I would definitely say. I think that I wouldn't have thought about leaving until I had my son. Being honest, I think it was having my son, my first child, that made me think I want to be home more, and with pharmacy, there were really long days. For some other people, it might be that they want to still be financially independent, so they want that regular income coming in while they're also building, their business. For some other people, they can see that actually I'm willing to sacrifice, maybe not having an income for maybe a year or two just to build this business, because I think this is actually what I need to be doing. So I would say that there's no sort of one answer that fits all, but I think that if we're honest and we really sort of dig deep and find out, what do I really want? If that makes sense. Like, what do I really want? And then I think if it's that I want that financial security, then I'm going to stay in my job and do this. If it's that actually I believe this is what I've been called to do, I want to do it, and I know that I can't do it efficiently or as well as I can do with my 9 to 5, then actually I'm going to go into that. But I think we just have to be honest, because you find a lot of people say, no, this is the right answer, this is the wrong answer. But truthfully, it's a personal thing. And I think that when you get to that point, you struggle with it more, being very honest. Speaking to other friends who are founders, you find that when you get to that point where you probably need to leave, maybe even going to work becomes like a chore. Things are just you kind of have that, as well. So I think it's definitely a personal point. But if we really look inwards, you will know when it's time. I think you will know when it's time. Yeah.
Okay, all right. The next question is, what's the biggest challenge you faced working with fashionpreneurs in Nigeria? as a fashion retailer?
I want to say, first of all, that my designers have been like amazing. I've been really, really blessed to have great relationships with my designers. I think sometimes, would I call it challenging? I think just like, one of the things that I said, when we were, sort of getting bigger and we wanted, designers to sort of like trust us, I think, give us more because you could see that we're doing the numbers. I think sometimes it's sort of that hesitation on their path as well. Especially when you're building something and you need, I mean, for our business, we need the designers, we don't create anything. And trying to get, designers to believe in your vision, and trust in what you're doing, especially when, sometimes we might onboard a new designer, maybe they don't get any sales for 2 months. They're going, oh, I thought you said this was going to work. How come I'm not getting? And it's that sort of having to sort of like, encourage them and talk to them and really just say, we're doing everything right. The sales will come. And most of the time they did come. So I think that for me, which honestly, I wouldn't even call it challenge because I think it's also part of, my role. But I think for when we really wanted to scale, when we wanted to build and we needed the trust of those designers, we needed designers that say, we believe in you, take this and all of that. And they couldn't see that vision. I would say that for me was probably like, one of the most challenging times. But I can honestly say that a lot of the designers that we work with now are designers who actually, even for me, like they push me even more to say, oh no, we can do this. Oh no. When I moved to Dubai, for instance, I wasn't thinking of starting a new one. I just was going to continue with Zara. It was actually my designers who said, have you thought about starting something in Dubai? So I think that, the people that are for you, like we say, they will find you and you'll find them. And I've been so, so grateful. But I think it's just, yeah, that part is what I would say has been the most challenging.
Okay, all right. Next question is, as a founder, how do you determine how much to pay yourself?
Whew. This is something, should I say that I'm still learning? Let me be very honest
Mm,
with you. I am actually still learning this. I think that as a founder, especially if you have a team, you would probably be the last person to get paid. And I think it just depends as well on where you are. Like for me, where Zara is not where Ania is. Zara is 11 years old. Ania is, less than 2 years old. If I say no, Ania has to pay me what Zara pays me, it's not going to make any sense. I know how long it took before I was even getting, what I would even class as a salary, from Zara. And so I think again, it's being very honest and looking at your numbers. It's not comparing yourself because that's a big one. Comparing yourself to what, your fashion friend is doing, how much they're able to pay, to pay themselves. But I think one of the best advice I ever got from also someone in the fashion who was also like, a fashion entrepreneur was pay yourself even if it's a little, even if it's 10,000 naira, even if it's 100 pounds, pay yourself. Because when you're doing the hard labor, when you're working and you're not really getting anything out of it, it has a way of sort of, it can like sort of get you down. But the moment you're
mm,
paying yourself from it, you're almost like, oh, I need to be able to make this money. And that gives you a push. And I think for me, it really did that. When I started to pay myself, it was very little when I started, and as the business got, was doing better, I then began to increase it. So with most of the staff that we have, and we don't have actually a big team, we have 3 people in our team. Of course, when you interview, you have a fixed salary, you give, you offer that to them. A lot of my team were all earning more than I was earning. But I knew that this was my business. This was more than just, a salary month to month. This was my calling, this is my purpose. And I knew that, of course, as we went on, it would be able to pay me. And so one thing for me that I really did was look at the numbers and I said, you know what, when we start doing this, I can get this. When we start doing this amount, when we start doing this figure, making these sales, I can get that. So that's the biggest advice I would say is look at what your business is if right now all your business can pay you is that amount and you can live on it, then I would say do that. Because whatever you sacrifice now, for sure you're going to get back in the future. As long as you keep putting in, your efforts, doing what you need to do, you will get that. So it's always at the beginning where we're not getting that income. If you've left a job, don't compare it. Don't be expecting to make, what you make from there. But I think the real key thing there is honestly just being honest and also being disciplined, not sort of putting your hand in all the time. Because sometimes people say, oh, I don't
Mm,
get a salary. But if you go back and look at how much they're taking in here and there, so I think that for me is what I would definitely say is be honest with yourself, look at your numbers and know that this, your business is your baby. Your business is your baby. And if you want that baby to grow, if you're taking money out of it, and that's not going to allow you to then do the things you need to do to get money in, I want to say,
mm,
who are you fooling, from there. So yeah, that's what I would advise.
mm. All right. Thank you. Next one is knowing all that you know now, what would you do differently at the early stage of your business?
I mean, I'm literally rewriting Zera's story with Ania. So everything that we
Mm,
wished,
mm,
some of the things I've shared here today are the things that, we're doing in Ania now. Like I shared earlier, we started very slow. I wasn't about, oh, I was never about, oh, I already know, because we already had, 10, 15 designers on Zera. We could just have started with all of them, but I didn't. I went really, really slow. I really wanted to know at from the beginning what our target audience was. I priced very well. I knew that okay, I priced for the market. That's something I should say. I didn't sort of say, okay, this is the maximum. I did, if I'm being honest, I did price lower to start
mm,
with just to sort of see, what people could afford. And then as I saw that people could afford more, or actually this was, doing really well, I could then sort of adjust the pricing. So I think for me, the two, and those are the things I've shared today, really, you know, sorry, those are things I've shared today really around the pricing, around, knowing my customer audience very, very quickly. I handled the social media for Zere for the first year. For Ania, sorry, for the first year. I was
wow.
the one
Wow.
speaking to customers, replying customers, customers knew me by name. I knew their kids, and I was really fortunate that in Dubai we host pop-ups quite frequently. So I was able to meet, customers in person. I have feedback, get real-time feedback from them as well. So all of those things that we didn't do in the beginning. In the beginning, we weren't speaking to anybody, we weren't sending out surveys, we weren't doing any reviews, nothing. These are all the things that I'm doing now. And especially even with the invisible labor, I was able to ask for help very quickly. Like I knew, where my strengths were not, and straight away I knew that okay, very early on we hired, a social media person. I was able to get like an ops person. Once we had the pop-ups, I wasn't trying to do it by myself. I was able to meet with a lady in Dubai who supplies me, with staffing for the day and things like that. So all of those things, really everything that I've shared, today were all the things that straight away, once I was building this second, platform in Dubai, I was implementing everything and so like so honestly it has just set Zara Ania up. Sorry, I interchanged them so quickly, but it has just set Ania up on such a a high pedestal, high foundation that
Mm,
where we are now, within the first where this is 22 months now of operating, Zara wasn't even there in 6 years. So
wow.
all the points that I've shared today is definitely the things that I've learned and I'm implementing.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. The next question is, what would you say you overestimated the importance of when you were building, and what did you underestimate?
Um, I'll say underestimate first. Again, what I've shared, just how much work it was going to be. I really thought it was going to be simple. I thought I'm just a
Mm,
middleman. These guys, they have pictures. If there's no pictures, we'll do it on mannequins. I underestimated how much work it would be. If I'm being honest, I got in trouble a couple of times in work because people were like, "Oh, she's speaking to a customer. Who's your customer?" So I really underestimated, how much work, even the emotional sort of like turmoil. Every time somebody will make a return, I would be like, somebody makes a complaint, it was very emotionally tasking on me. But so I think those things are the things that I thought in terms of things I overestimated. That's a good question. I'm trying to think. Um, uh, do you know what? If I'm being very honest, I'm the kind of person where I don't do like, how will I put it? I kind of like to stay in my lane. I'm not a pessimist, but I kind of will downplay things because I don't want to get hurt or I don't want to fail, and I think that's actually like what I've had to really, these businesses have really grown in me to have hope, to have faith, because I'm kind of the person that I want to sort of barricade everything. Okay, what can we do to not fail? What can we do? So if I'm being really honest, I actually don't think I overestimated anything. I think if anything, I underestimated everything. I just kind of thought, let's bring everything low. And that's why my pricing was low. I just kind of I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to be known
Mm,
as a failure, not even so much for everybody, but for myself. So I think that if there's most things I think I underestimated rather than overestimated. I always, sometimes we would get a new designer. I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't think they're going to sell, and then they'll do well. I never really ever thought, oh no, oh no, we'll be fine. I think and
mm,
that's just how I'm wired. But now I've really learned to relax and have faith, really rest in the confidence that, you know your stuff. You've been doing this for a while. You're passionate about it, So I would say those, if that's an answer, I would probably
okay,
say
it
no.
is. It's valid. It's valid. Thank you. We have more questions. The next is a lot of African brands don't do co-funding. But then, how would you define co-funding beyond shared ownership? And what makes a co-founder truly essential to the brand's creative, operational, and long-term growth?
Do you know? See, if there's one advice I give to people, especially for us in, the fashion industry, is if you are going to take on a co-founder, it has to be somebody who aligns with you because our business is very different to a lot of businesses. And if you have a co-founder who doesn't understand, the way fashion works, understands that it's slow growth. It's not, you might make an outfit and it's viral, but that doesn't mean it's going to be sustainable. Do you know what I mean? And I think sometimes, I find that the fashion industry is slow. Like it
Mm,
doesn't take off like other industries might. It's slow and steady, which is why I said it's a marathon, is not a sprint. And so sometimes if you then take on a co-founder who doesn't understand that, who doesn't understand how it works, who doesn't understand, the time and the effort and everything that has to go into it, I think it can be really detrimental. And I've seen that, break businesses. Because especially as fashion people and as creatives, sometimes we can be so focused on what we're doing, our niche, and we kind of leave everything else out. I hear a lot of, even some of my designers say things like, I'm not good at business, I'm just good at creating, I'm just good at designing. And I think and because of that, they then get on a co-founder, someone who's good at those things. What I would advise is hire out. Maybe not get a co-founder, but hire, because as you go on, I promise you, you will begin to know numbers. If you don't like math, you will learn math, because the moment, money is coming in, but it's always going out, what's happening, you will know your numbers. It's nothing like when you're in, when you're in like a 9 to 5 or in a job. When it is your business, you are everything, especially in those first years. So some people fear that, oh, I need somebody who knows this part. I will focus on this part. I assure you're going to be in everything. So I would rather say, hire somebody for those roles, hire the accountant, hire the, if you're not good with sales, because you find that as well, hire the sales rep and you can focus on that. But also, as you're doing that, keep learning, because even when you have the accountant, I find that you also need to know your books. You also need to know what is going on in your business, because by the time you get to the accountant, sometimes it's too late. But I find that co-founding is really, really, we've had people, offer us to come in partnership with us. And I say us because my husband and I know we both run Zara and Ania, and we've had to, even when we didn't, because again, another thing co-founders bring, they bring different things. Some people will bring exposure, some people will bring the money in it as well. But I'm so grateful, because even when we didn't know a lot, we were like, let's see how it goes. Better to take it slow, better to be able to create, two pieces a year or two pieces every season than creating 15, or 10 and growing your business. Because if you bring someone on who doesn't understand that, and they're bringing things into it that they want to be rewarded for, and they're not getting that reward for, if they come out and that becomes the collapse of your business,
Mm,
everything that you've worked for. So I definitely will say that that's such a big, big decision, a big, big decision to make. And if you're not armed with the knowledge to make that decision, then don't go into it. Honestly, that's what
mm,
I would advise. Yeah.
All right, all right. So the next question is from a fashion founder. She says, I've been running my business for 5 years and I feel like I'm still figuring it out. Does this feeling ever go away?
It doesn't. And I think, first of all, I would say that if you feel like you're still figuring out, that's great, because that means you're actually open to learning. Some
Mm,
founders, especially fashion, they feel like they know it. Like, I know my business, I know my customers, I know what sells. But like I said, things are always changing. Like, I don't think we will ever know it all. I don't think we will, until we're ready to, say, oh, this part of it is done, which hopefully never, we will never know it. Or we are, we will keep learning. I mean, like I said, the introduction of AI now is changing everything. It's changing, even especially the fashion industry. So I think that don't it's not wrong to not know it all. It's actually the right thing. If that's how
mm,
you feel, you're actually on the right path, because again, that means you're open to learning, you're open to pivoting, you're open to adapting. And just make sure that you don't let that feeling become a negative. Channel it into a positive, channel it into learning more, going for courses, reading up on things. Do you know what I mean? Speaking, meeting up with like fashion entrepreneurs as well. Like, don't let that, sometimes that feeling can feel overwhelming, can make you feel like, oh, I don't even know what I'm doing. How can I have done this for 5 years and I don't know? But don't feel like that, because I promise you, and this is why I say it's so important to hang out with people in your sector. Because when I'm speaking
mm,
with people, I realize I'm not alone. I realize that actually the things that come to my mind, the thoughts that I think, oh my God, I'm not supposed to be doing this. Actually, when I speak to other people, we're all in the same boat. Even the people
mm,
that you think are far ahead, they're still figuring it out. So I would say definitely, definitely, like, you are on the right path, and that is the right attitude. That's the right mindset to have. So yeah.
Okay. Looking back, what's one thing you believed about building Zara that you've completely changed your mind about?
Let me see. Completely changed my mind. Let me see. Um, I think that maybe when I was building Zara, I always kind of thought we would have like a physical location. I always thought maybe,
Mm,
I always thought that that was like, all this online, we need to have a physical location. And again, about adapting to where we are now, we see that actually a lot of physical locations are now closing, and now it's back to online. So sometimes the plans change. And then moving to Dubai, we then realized that actually people want to see things in person. In the
mm,
UK, in the US, people are, I say people, but customers are used to just shopping online, But in Dubai, actually, I found that people want to see things in person. And so that's why I was saying again that for every market, it's different. If I had just come in with that notion that, oh no, I'm really good with online, we know what we're doing, and I stuck to online, I would have thought I failed. I would have thought that, oh no, it's not for this, maybe African fashion is not for the UAE, it's not for Dubai, it's not for the Middle East. But because I
Mm,
listened to what people wanted, actually people want, a store. And so for me, it's now almost like, changed. I went from, oh, we definitely need a store to sell to actually, no, I think online is where we need to be. And then a few years later, coming to Dubai now and realizing, oh no, I think online is where we need to be. And everyone is going, oh no, we want to see things in person. So I think again, it's that thing of what you have in your mind or what you start with, what you think it's going to look like, it might not always look like that, and that's okay. As long as you're still doing the right thing and you're on the right path, you're doing what you set out to do. I think that that's what's most important. But things will definitely change as you go along. Like, yeah,
mm,
even just the design when we started. I mean, you can imagine 11 years ago what designers, which designers were there. I thought, I couldn't wait to, there were certain names on my list that I was like, oh, I can't wait to stock them. Some of them are not operational anymore. So again, sometimes you kind of set that goal, but actually the
mm,
people I stock, some of the designers that I stock now are actually now on the level of those. But if I'd put my mind like, no, these were my end game, these are the guys I need to stock. If I don't stock them, I haven't arrived, I haven't done well. Actually, I would have missed it that way. So yeah, so
mm.
that's definitely what I would say.
Okay. The next question says, we have a staffing problem in Nigeria. What you look out for during your hiring process?
See, staffing, and that's why I said earlier that hire quickly but hire wisely because again, even the interview process, people are so good at interviewing, I've learned. And then you start working with them and you're like, how is this the same person I interviewed? So what I really have changed my approach in interviewing. I don't ask now, the straightforward
Mm,
questions because if I'm being honest, um, and I say this because I have some of my staff members are actually based in Nigeria. Because I'm not in Nigeria, they do a lot of our QC, they do a lot of our meeting with the designers in person, they do a lot of our onboarding and all of that as well. And so what I realized, if I'm being very honest, is that it's a character problem, not a skill problem.
mm,
So when I used to interview, I interview people based on their skill, based on their experience, what they've done before, what they can handle. But I realized that where the people might be skillful, their character is not good. And
mm,
so, and so though they might be, I've had to let go of people who were really good, but they didn't want to work. They didn't have the company's, the business's interest at heart. They weren't able to troubleshoot when things went wrong. They were just quickly to pass it on to me, rather than how can we figure this out, things like that. And again,
mm,
it speaks more about, the way they handled the business. The staff I have now, I'm so grateful. They handled, the business like it's their business. Like it's
mm,
their baby. And that's what you want. You want people who actually believe in the vision rather than people who are just going from paycheck to paycheck. And so
mm,
when I'm interviewing someone now, I'm looking for this, the way you're answering. I'm asking questions that are actually more character based than skill based. I do ask the
mm,
skill as well, but I look for those. So if I'm getting that inclination that, I don't think it will be a good fit, no matter how, I don't care if the recruiter says this is, the best of the best, she's worked in your industry. If I can, you can sense it. And I think, I don't want to say as women, but women, men as well, I suppose, we have that intuition. Do you know what I mean? And I listen to that as well. And most times I am right. So I'll definitely say that, what's that saying that if people show you who they are, believe them. So even
mm,
in a 30 minutes conversation, you can see how people respond to things. If you're asking them their old place of work, the way they're talking about their old boss, their
mm,
environment, even if it was a difficult situation, you can pick on things like that. I think that that would save you because it is better to have someone who has good character, who has good manners, who's willing to work. It's easier to train them to do what you need them to do than the other way around, having someone, because especially if they're working with a team, they can also begin, what's that thing of
mm.
bad character, or is it, corrupt others? It does. Like if
Yes,
they're working with people and people, they can start to rub off and things like that. So especially when
definitely.
you're building a team, for me, when my ops manager was the only person alongside me for a long time, I needed somebody who would encourage me, who would pull me out, who would say, no, we can do this. I didn't necessarily need somebody who could answer the phone or speak to. A lot of people can do
Mm,
that, but you need somebody. I needed somebody who would be my right hand person. And I'm so grateful that I did that. But yeah, but that's what I would definitely look for, the character traits, from how they speak. And I promise you, it will save you. It'll save you a
mm.
lot.
Okay, wow, thank you. And then your final question says, how have you been able to stay consistent with Zara's identity while navigating growth and change?
Again, I go back to why we're doing this. As I've gone on in this business, you would see, other business similar to what I do, doing this, doing something new. And you can't, sometimes I might want to be pulled away and, get carried away and go, oh, how about we do this? And how about we do that? But I just stayed true to, what I wanted. My mission, my goal is simple. I love these designers. I love their designs. I believe that they deserve, a global scale. I love people. I love interacting with people. I'm my happiest at my pop-ups. I love, speaking with people, getting to know people. I love it when someone sends us an email and goes, "Oh my God, I wore this dress and it made me feel, it made me feel this way." And, we were a little, a part of that. So I try not to get, distracted by the other things, because there will
Mm,
be other things, there'll be other things, and sometimes that might then take me away from what I want to do. But I try not to be distracted. And I try to just stay grounded on that this is my goal, this is what I want to do. Yes, there might be other avenues that might serve that, but actually what are you true to? And it is one of our big values, in Zara, that what you see is what you get. I mean,
mm,
even down to the picture, we want, what you see, we're very transparent, we're very honest, we're very open. And I think our customers, and, we're consistent, we're reliable. And I think our customers have come to know that about us. And so I try not to get, especially, there's a lot going on, there's a lot people are doing, but I try to just stay in my lane, and then just build on that. So that's what I would say.
thank you so very
Yay,
much,
thank you so
Tosin. Thank you for your
much.
honesty. Thank you for your time. That was really that was in depth, that was heartfelt, that was raw, that was real. Thank you so much. And we hope you're staying safe in Dubai. Hope you're
Yes,
safe
yes,
and
I
you're good.
am.
Okay. Okay, great. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who asked a question as well. Those were really great questions. And I hope I've been able to give some insight and help you out a bit. But yeah, but from here I'm cheering, every designer, cheering you on, and hopefully looking forward to stocking you as well. But please, if you have any questions as well, please feel free to reach out to me, send me a DM. I'm always, happy to just help anyone out as well. But thank you so much, Taiwo, for having me. A big thank you to Toastin and to the whole Mint Slayers team as well. This has been a truly just truly amazing, and I'm truly honored.
Thank you very much, Tosin. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tosin.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Toastin. Lovely to see you.
Same here.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your night.
Yes, we will. All right, take care.
All
Thank
right,
you.
bye.
Bye.
All right, thank you everyone. We'll be going on a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We have another seasoned speaker, two seasoned speakers that are going to be joining us shortly, and I'll see you all very soon.